All right. Hello out there, everybody in TV land and the tubes of the internet. Let's get ready for this week in space. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a astrologer, tarot reader, mental health counselor, and I like to show up every Monday at 11-ish Mountain Time to give you the breakdown of what's going on in the celestial spheres. And I appreciate everybody's patience. Last week, I was giving a talk at the Astromagia conference, give a talk on the element of water, ecologically, psychologically, astrologically, and magically. And I just didn't have the mojo to put together my week in space last week. But we're back and better than ever, baby. So thank you all for tuning in. That being said, let's get the show on the road. Oh, also, yeah, I put together a panel discussion with Blair Bogan, Sarah Janes, Gray Crawford, and Jeannie Ruftopoulos on the moon, Jupiter, and joy as a revolutionary act. And those should be available through Astromagia if y'all are so inclined. That is a great conference, and you can purchase the videos of the conference when they're released in about a week or so. And I'll probably have them on my website for sale in the not so distant future. So just stay tuned for that. All right. Without further ado, let's look at this week in space for November the 10th, 2025 through November the 16th of 2025. And actually, we're going to start a little way back on Friday, November the 7th. There are a couple things going down last Friday that I think are kind of some big news that because I didn't do my report last week, I wanted to touch on to kick us off this week because on Friday the 7th, we had Uranus retrograding back into the fixed Earth sign of Taurus. So Uranus spends approximately 7 years in a sign, and they were in Taurus from 2018, 2019. They kind of went back and forth between Taurus and Aries between 2018 and 2019, but they were holding it down in Taurus from, yeah, 2018 until July of this year. Uranus first entered Gemini on July 7th of 2025, and they will be retrograde until February 3rd when they station direct at 27 degrees and 27 arc minutes of Taurus. And then Uranus will re-enter Gemini on April 25th of 2026, and they will stay in the mutable air sign of Gemini all the way until 3032. So if you have any points or planets at the early degrees of Gemini, you get a little bit of a breather. If you have any points or degrees, sorry, points or planets at the very end of Taurus, this is your time to shine. Uranus is a planet of breakdown and breakthrough. They are a disruptor and an awakener. Uranus is seeking freedom and liberation, sometimes at all costs, and it will destabilize systems that may feel too rigid or contained in order to break free and create change. Uranus is kind of seeking the ideal, this sort of imaginary perfection, and it will act suddenly and sometimes quite ruthlessly to achieve that goal. And liberation is not always easy. For example, if we are burdened or weighed down by our objects, Uranus might show up as a fire to liberate us from our material possessions. Or if we're constrained by a job, Uranus might liberate us by getting us fired. So freedom is not always gentle, and there are certain structures and supports that we don't necessarily want to liberate ourselves from, especially if it happens too soon, too fast, or if it's really unexpected. In Gemini, Uranus is or was and will again be creating breakdowns and breakthroughs in areas of information, communication, and binary systems. And we just got the first preview of Uranus in Gemini from July 7th up until now. And we have seen an increase in AI generated imagery, AI starting to take jobs, and higher levels of AI communication. It's sort of like become integrated into absolutely everything, whether you want it or not. And I read somewhere recently that now AI is generating AI art that is based on AI art because there's so much AI art flooding the internet, which is creating a kind of recursive AI art loop, which I think is pretty interesting. And who knows where that is going? But that's just I don't know, a little fascinating tidbit that I just read. Uranus is also an innovator, and it strives towards its idealistic vision in whatever sign it inhabits. And Uranus drives innovation and encourages out of the box thinking. Again, in Gemini, this may look like new ways of processing and communicating information, as well as new revelations on holding the opposite ends of a spectrum and radical new ways of navigating our relationship with duality. So, Uranus creates change through challenging existing norms and disrupting structures that it may find too rigid or restrictive. However, sometimes it gets a little trigger happy and just wants to create change for change's sake. And there can be benefits to established orders, to structure, to habits and routines. And these tend to create stability and a sense of we know what's happening next. And sometimes these things can be really beneficial. However, Uranus is really easily bored and can throw a revolution and create disruption in areas where radically change is not necessarily needed just for funsies. And now that Uranus re-enters Taurus, and it's been here before, again from 2018 and 2019 till the end, till July of this year. And so if we just think back and imagine our worlds in 2018, 2019, they're much different than the world that we are living in now. Taurus is a sign that deals with our values. It's a fixed earth sign that seeks to hold on to what it values and to maintain stability and practical resources that support material comfort. And Uranus just kind of blew that all up, huh? Right? We have the pandemic, supply chain issues, increased grocery prices, increased housing prices, increased prices on almost everything, and no increase in the minimum wage. And recently, unemployment has reached the highest rate it's been since COVID in the early days of Uranus and Taurus. And currently, SNAP and food assistance benefits for 42 million Americans who depend on that food assistance is being withheld by the government. Meanwhile, Trump has torn down the east wing of the White House to build himself a golden ballroom. And that's some French Revolution shit right there, I tell you what. And so, as Uranus re enters Taurus from now until April 25th, we will be revisiting themes around our values and how they are revolutionized or radicalized, as well as disruptions in our personal habits and collective established norms around engagement with resources, material stability, and comfort. Oh, hold on, I gotta restart my notes app. Sometimes I tell you what, and that will bring me to my next point, which I'll get to in a second, that Mercury also stationed retrograde on Friday. And so be aware of technical glitches and computer issues. Okay, we're back on it. Okay, so we might want to consider how these aspects of life around resources, values, material stability, and comfort have shifted since Uranus first entered Taurus back in 2018. And what we're being asked to awaken to now that this planet of disruption, revelation, revolution makes their final pass through Taurus. What might need to shift or be revolutionized in our own internal landscape in order for our own dealings with the material world to sort of shift and change, and our own relationship to resources to evolve? And how might that contribute to a collective awakening or shift that Uranus is calling in this fixed Earth sign? Um, Whoa, and Gina Maria is saying there is a speculation about building a data center under the East Wing. I heard that those are pretty annoying to live by, and I think that it would be kind of interesting to have constant buzzing and high-pitched squealing of cooling fans operating underneath the White House, and how that might drive the people in power even more crazy. So, you know what? I'm kind of here for it. So, also Friday, November 7th, we had Mercury stationing retrograde in Sagittarius at 6 degrees and 51 arc minutes. So, Mercury will be retrograde from November 7th until November the 29th. They will retrograde back into Scorpio on November 18th and station direct at 20 degrees and 42 arc minutes of Scorpio on November the 29th. So this should make Thanksgiving travel and Thanksgiving dinner and time with family pretty interesting. So Mercury entered their shadow phase on October the 21st when they reached that 20-degree, 42 arc minute point in Scorpio. So there may be some things from the past few weeks that need to be revisited, revived, or reworked. So just keep an eye out for what's returning and asking to be rethought or reconsidered. This retrograde in Sagittarius is asking us to rethink our beliefs and our ideas about truth. What is true for you? And what are the truths that we are being presented with? What is the information we are receiving? And how does that call into question or conflict with what we believe in? Or how does it support our belief system? Sagittarius is focused on the target, and we may need to reconsider what we are aiming at as we update our belief systems. Is what is true for you now the same as it was last year or the year before that? What's changed? And what might need to be revised in order for you to take aim at the right target for you at this time? So last time Mercury was retrograde in Sagittarius was last year from November 25th to December the 5th. And during that retrograde, Mercury was opposing Jupiter, who is the ruler of Sagittarius, or the dispositor, as they say. And Jupiter at that time was in detriment in Gemini. This time, Jupiter has more resources to support Mercury. With Jupiter in Cancer, the sign of Jupiter's exaltation ruling Sagittarius, which is the sign where Mercury is currently retrograde. Also, Mercury is in detriment in Sagittarius. They have a little bit of a challenging time because Sagittarius is looking for coherent narratives and kind of bigger story arcs, where Mercury is more interested in the details and pulling everything out and questioning everything. And Sagittarius, sign of belief, is like not so into being questions or being questioned. And so however, with Jupiter in Cancer, there is a lot more support for Mercury during this retrograde. And while this retrograde will still have retrograde themes like slowdowns, delays, and miscommunications, there is more support in the land of Sagittarius to help Mercury navigate the confusion created by this retrograde. And a little tip for Mercury retrograde in Sag: bring a book with you. And if you find yourself delayed, use that as an opportunity to get some learning in, all right? So, during Mercury's retrograde, it will enter back into Scorpio, which asks us to revisit the depths and to reconsider some of the emotional bonds that we are kind of clinging to. There may need to be some deeper emotional undercurrents that need to be re-examined in order for us to move forward more skillfully. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. It is holding on to the emotional bonds and attachments that have been forged through life. And this can be emotional connections that we have created with others, or the resentments that we continue to hold on to, and the axes that we choose to grind. One of the ways that I think about fixed water is in relation to ice, not the fascist police that are kidnapping people, but the actual solidified water. Um, Scorpio surrounds and encases things. It locks them the fuck in. It solidifies them, just like ice solidifies water. And just like ice freezes microbes, bacteria, minerals, and organic matter within it, Scorpio solidifies feelings and attachments and connections. It also freezes memories, events, and moments. A moment of silence with a partner, an offhanded comment from a coworker, the gaze from a stranger. These all become encased in the scorpionic ice and used in the service of the creation of safety or the fulfillment of desires. So, as Mercury returns to Scorpio on November 18th, we may be called to re examine some of the emotional material that has become frozen in our systems. We may need to dive below the surface into the depths of the still waters of Scorpio in order to reconsider some of the attachments and uncomfortable feelings that we find ourselves holding on to or that are holding on to us. These frozen feelings may be influencing our belief system around the ways in which we feel safe to be in our bodies or to be in relationships or to be in the world. And some of the deep feels that are lying in the murky bottoms of these scorpionic wells of the self may be impacting our version of the truth. Sagittarius knows that truth is mutable and that each truth is drawn from perspective. But the idea is to gain objective distance on a situation and to develop a kind of bigger picture view that can hold both the personal and the universal truth. Some of the Scorpio material that is asking to be reworked may be preventing us from tapping into that bigger version of the truth, at least until it becomes unfrozen. Maybe holding us in a more relative understanding of reality based on fears and past wounds that ultimately prevent us from being vulnerable and experiencing the deeper intimacy that Scorpio craves. And it may be keeping us from the intimacy with the world that Sagittarius is shooting for. So that kind of brings us up to date. This week, Tuesday, November the 11th, Jupiter stations retrograde in Cancer at 25 degrees and 9 arc minutes. So Jupiter will be retrograde in Cancer until March 10th, when it stations direct at 15 degrees and 5 minutes of Cancer. So Jupiter, the greater benefic, we love him. As a planet associated with expansion, knowledge, and wisdom. And traditionally, it was associated with the clergy and the priest class, whose job it was to bestow blessings and benedictions on people. Jupiter is a planet of coherence, and it helps us to expand our awareness, to understand the bigger picture and the larger narrative arc of our experience. As this planet goes retrograde, these gifts become kind of internalized. This helps us to expand our inner worlds and to integrate some of the knowledge and learning that we have received while Jupiter has been transiting through Cancer, the sign of their exaltation since June 9th of this year. Cancer is a water sign associated with nourishment, nurturing, and as a cardinal water sign, Cancer initiates through strong emotion that pull or drive us. It is also associated with themes of home and family, comfort and care. It is a place where where we are cradled and protected. It is the family dinner in some families, or your friend's dinner where you feel safe and supported. It is a blanket fort. It is the mother's embrace. Jupiter in the sign expands what we have the capacity to care about and what we care for. And it reminds us that what we care for also cares for us. As the as the greater benefic moves retrograde, we are asked to integrate these lessons and to internalize that sense of care. How do we care for ourselves? What nourishes us? What ways have we found to nurture ourselves? And to extend the care that we have cultivated for friends and family and the things that we love. And how do we extend that care also to our own inner children and the parts of ourselves that feel difficult or challenging, that are maybe asking for help or for regulation? through different behaviors which we might find difficult or challenging. Cancer, ruled by the moon, is also associated with themes of belonging. And Jupiter's time in this sign helps us to expand that sense of belonging. Questions of who belongs and where do I belong come to the forefront. And during Jupiter's retrograde motion, we may consider a sense of internal belonging and how we belong to ourselves and and what is the space that we allow ourselves to occupy in our own internal worlds. And how can we bring that into better alignment with our experience of the external world? And ideally, expand that sense of belonging in who we allow to belong and who we make a place for and who we welcome in. Jupiter's retrograde in Cancer is also an opportunity to tap into our own inner wisdom, the inner knowing that lives beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. Again, Cancer is cardinal water, and I think about this like a freshwater spring. As Jupiter moves retrograde in the sign, we have the opportunity to tap into the waters that reside deep in the groundwater of our souls. What untapped wisdom lives there? What ways can we expand our access to these subterranean aquifers? What might they need to thrive and to continue to nourish us? What is the inner knowledge that operates within us, and how do we cultivate that? And how do we help provide ways for that to flow out and move to the surface? Jupiter's retrograde is a time for inner expansion. And what does inner expansion look like for you? And what does that even mean? I think a lot of life is taken up by external demands and the quest to provide safety and security in an ever shifting and often chaotic world. We are coached and conditioned to always be striving for more money, more time, more resources, bigger toys, longer vacations, more abundance. Yeah. But what happens when we shift that focus to our inner worlds? What might need to grow and expand to help you to have more capacity to hold what is right and what feels good? How could more internal space help you to be with what is challenging or uncomfortable? What are the ways that we might be able to create a little bit more space in our internal worlds? What might need to expand in your psyche or in yourself to help to provide more space for care and connection? And how does this expansion of our inner lives and worlds help us to learn and grow within ourselves and to create the space for more wisdom? Like I said at the outset of this section, Jupiter was associated with the priest class, and it bestows not only knowledge and wisdom, but also blessings. The bestowing of blessings and benediction was the job of the priests. And so, with Jupiter moving retrograde, this is a time to count our blessings and to practice gratitude. And this can seem like kind of strange or even selfish or self-indulgent during such an unhinged time. But gratitude helps us to develop resilience. It helps us to shift our perspective and to increase our capacity to be with what's difficult and challenging. This, in turn, helps us to stay regulated and to support others who may be experiencing fear, grief, or other forms of difficulty and dysregulation. And this is care. And this is a blessing. We can also consider the ways we are able to bestow this blessing upon ourselves. This can look like offering ourselves kindness, or a little bit more patience, or some ease. And these too are blessings. And so, what are the ways we are able to receive the blessings that the world has to offer us, big and small? Can we take that in just a little bit more during this time? Can we create just a little bit more internal space to let that sink in a little bit deeper, down to the core, down to that groundwater? And as we allow ourselves to receive these blessings, how does that shift or alter our core beliefs and the stories we are telling ourselves and the myths that we are living out? This may be a time of reworking the mythic narrative we are engaged in. This is a great time to ask ourselves, what is the story I'm telling myself? What is the movie I'm living out? Is this accurate to who I am and what I was meant to be doing? Is this even my story? Or did it come from my parents or from society or from my ancestors? If this isn't even my story, what would be a better mythology for me to play a role in or to live out? What might need to shift or be reworked so that the story I'm telling and living can be more appropriate for who I am in this moment and who I want to grow into moving forward? Which moves us to Wednesday, November the 12th. We have Mars in Sagittarius, conjunct Mercury, who's retrograde in Sagittarius. This is occurring at 6 degrees and 4 arc minutes. So, Mercury was conjunct Mars a few weeks ago, back on October 20th at 19 degrees of Scorpio. Now, both Mars and Mercury have shifted signs into the mutable fire sign of Sagittarius, and Mercury is stationed retrograde. They will make three conjunctions in their current dance. Uh, there was the first one on the 20th of October. The second one is happening Wednesday, the 12th. And then we will have a third and final conjunction on January 18th of 2026 in Capricorn, which happens to be the sign of Mars's exaltation. And I find it interesting that in two of these three conjunctions, Mars has dignity. Mars was in rulership in Scorpio the first time they were conjunct. This time, Mercury is in detriment in Sagittarius. Mars doesn't have any dignity there, but the third one, Mars will be exalted in Capricorn. So this current Mars Mercury conjunction is kicking off Mercury's retrograde, and it will most likely spice some things up. Mars brings heat, impulsiveness, and conflict to the party. We may find an extra level of frustration when things don't go the way that we planned. And there may be an increase of feelings of intensity midweek as this conjunction perfects. So, just be prepared for that. During this conjunction, we may find ourselves revisiting some themes that came up around October 20th, the last time these two planets were conjunct. That was the day before the Libra new moon, as well as the day before Mercury entered their retrograde shadow. So, you can use that as a reference if that helps. So maybe think back and notice what was going on for you at that time. At that time, their conjunction was occurring in Mars's domicile of Scorpio. And at that time, Mars may have felt emboldened and empowered to act and to penetrate into the emotional depths that Scorpio craves. And Mercury is kind of a chameleon. They're a shapeshifter, they're a trickster, and they will take on the characteristics of whatever planet they are around. And they will generally encourage whoever they are hanging out with, whether it's a good idea or not. And so when Mercury's hanging out with Mars, and Mars is always kind of cruising for a bruising and looking for a fight, and Mercury's sitting there being like, yo, did you hear what he just said about your mom? And just waiting for Mars to pop off and for some excitement to happen. So, yeah, Mercury can be sort of an amplifier and be putting ideas in Mars's head about how frustrating this is, or like how this is some bullshit and we got to do something about it. So just pay attention to that. And so during the Mars Mercury conjunction in Scorpio, we may have been feeling an increase in mental energy and a desire to get to the bottom of things and to explore the depths in our connections and conversations. We also may have said things kind of off the cuff. Mars is a little impulsive and gotten into disagreements, conflicts, or uncomfortable conversations. Again, Mars is looking for conflict. We also may have encountered defensiveness or felt like we were being attacked verbally in some way, which required us to be on the defensive. However, with this Mercury-Mars conjunction, they have shifted into Sagittarius. Here, Mars is out of their domicile of Scorpio, and Mercury happens to be in their detriment. And Mercury is retrograde, which means that we are being asked to revisit, reevaluate, reconsider some of the themes that may have been initiated during their last conjunction back on October the 20th. There may have been some things said on or around the 20th that need to be walked back or at least returned to and reworked. We also may need to reconsider some of the things that have been initiated under the intellectual energy that was sparked by the first Mars Mercury conjunction. Mars is driving. So there may have been some motivating mental energy, which is great for starting projects or focusing in on things. But now we may need to rethink some of the things that we were working on back then. Mercury's retrograde is a time for editing and reviewing what was done. Mars is a blade whoosh, or a cutting implement. So we can use Mars's blade to edit and cut away and refine whatever projects were initiated or engaged with during their last conjunction to help us to refine the finished product. And, that may come about during their last conjunction in January. But during this conjunction, we want to consider what our real concerns are. What is the most important thing for us to focus our valuable attention on and to direct our mental focus towards? Mars is also courage, and Mars and Mercury together is the courage to speak up and to speak out about what's important. In Sagittarius, this is the courage to speak our beliefs and to tell our truths. It is important to remember that we can hold multiple truths and there exist multiple truths. And so we want to leave a little space for that multiplicity. Mars and Mercury can get a little monofocused and even narrow minded. And in Sagittarius, there is always the danger of becoming a little too dogmatic or defensive if we feel like our beliefs or what we hold true is being attacked in some way. So this is a good time to consider what truths or ideas do you really need to defend in order to maintain your integrity? And what beliefs are important enough to express outwardly or even to fight for? Um, this may be a time of reworking some of these inner beliefs and having to kind of re-examine our inner world and core beliefs before we go telling everybody what's what and how everything should be. And so we want to use this as an opportunity both for refining and editing, but also reconsidering, what we hold true and what is integral to who we are and our belief system, and what is worth fighting for, what is worth speaking up about, and what is worth kind of defending, which moves us to Sunday, November the 16th. And I believe this is our last transit for the week. It's kind of a light week in space. And you know what? I'm happy for that. And it ends on a high note because Sunday, November the 16th, we have the Sun in Scorpio, trine Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. This is going down at 25 degrees and 6 minutes of those water signs. So Jupiter has just stationed retrograde earlier in the week, and now the Sun is coming in to form a supportive trine aspect. Trines are easy, which is nice. There's a harmonious flow between two planets in a trine. They're able to share their gifts with each other and to support each other through collaboration. So, the Sun deals with our inner spiritual wisdom and our aspirations, as well as our sense of self and our ego identity. Jupiter deals with optimism and faith, as well as expansion and knowledge. So, this transit helps us to have faith in ourselves and in our inner knowing. It also helps us to expand our sense of I, or our ego identity. The Sun in Scorpio is interested in digging in the depths and to find deep emotional connections and to forge emotional bonds. Jupiter here asks the Sun to kind of look up and notice the care that is available all around. I think about the Sun just like sort of digging and digging, seeking for the deep waters, the deep Scorpio well. And Jupiter's like, yo, look around you. Notice what's available. Notice what's out there. Notice how good it can be. Sun's sort of like covered in dirt, like looking up, all gothic and pale. And so this is an opportunity to kind of look around and see what's out there, see what's available for us, and to lean into what supports and nourishes our sense of self without getting locked into a story that is too small for the expansive potential that we each get to hold. Jupiter says it can be easy, bro. We don't always need to be digging in the dark. We can lean into what's working and what helps us to feel more ourselves. This transit can bring some emotional buoyancy and a sense of optimism, which is much needed at a time like this. And it's interesting to note how we feel about ourselves and what is possible when we have that sense of optimism and faith. I feel I feel like it really helps to expand our possibilities, and it helps me to feel more at ease when I'm like, there are possibilities out there. Oh, things can work. When I feel like nothing's working, it closes down my reality. So this trine helps us to see the bigger picture, which helps us to have a better awareness of the patterns that are unfolding in the various aspects of our lives, which in turn helps us to make more sound and better informed decisions. Again, when we allow ourselves to have possibilities and we take the time to sort of see the arc unfolding, it gives us a little bit more space to choose. When we can't see how things are unfolding, when we don't have possibilities, our realities and our choice points become very narrow, and that's kind of a hard place to live. So this is a good time to sort of step back and observe the big picture and to consider what we are doing and how that fits our needs in the moment, as well as how it relates to our longer term goals. And so this is a good time to expand our minds through new experiences or through learning or travel. And as we feed our minds and our understanding of ourselves and the world, it helps us to expand our sense of self and our relationship with the larger world. So this is a good time to take it easy and to allow for some rest, because that can also help us to expand our capacity to be present, and help us to sort of navigate life when things are more challenging, when we're getting harder aspects, and when we're dealing with the frustrations of the Mercury retrograde. And so this is a really good time to sort of open to some of the blessings that Jupiter has to offer and to be open to what that could look like. Even if they don't appear in forms that you recognize or even the form that you wanted them to come in, see if you can take in the blessings that are available to you. And this may, again, take like expanding our belief, expanding our awareness, expanding what we allow ourselves to perceive and what we believe is available to us. And, it might be a really good time to just practice soaking up some of the good that might be available for you today. And that might just really come in handy later on. So, with that, my friends, that is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate your attention. I appreciate you all being out there. I'm going to hang out for a minute on the Instagram and answer any questions that anyone might have, shoot the shit for a minute. And yeah, thank you all so much. And I don't know. If you're interested in tarot or astrology readings, you can find me at campwizardcamp.com. And yeah, hit me up and we can get something on the books if you need any extra support during these trying and turbulent times. And other than that, I will see you all next week. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And until then, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.